Let's jump into it. Brian, awesome to have you on here on the audit, hanging out with us here with Nick Mellum. You might have met Nick in person a while ago.
Oh, yeah.
And Josh. So thanks for jumping on. I know we've been trying to do this for a while, but you're the inspiration behind even doing this podcast. So again, thank you for that. You and I need to get together in the near future, have coffee again, go indoor skydiving again. I don't know what happened. I fell off a cliff, but it took the podcast to get us back together. So anyway, thanks for coming on.
Real quick, did you guys actually go indoor skydiving together?
We did. Yeah. Brian is a master at it. Like, I mean,
I've got one down the road.
Do you?
It's called I skydive or something like that, or I dive, or
yep.
I fly.
I fly. No, he's going front to back now. He's all over the place.
He's nimble. He's in there all over.
Yeah, he's all over. It sounds easy, right? Like, oh yeah, you throw on this dirty suit that they give you and like this dirty helmet, and then they spin the wind up like 200 miles an hour or whatever, and then like they start you out like laying on this net and this wind blowing up, and you're just supposed to hover there. And I think I could get that down pretty good. Yep. And then after that, they flip you over on your back. And that let's be honest, that takes about 3 or 4 weeks, right? Because like
get that part down.
Yeah. And I mean, you're paying $30 a minute or something crazy. And like, you're in there for like 90 seconds, right? Like, so Brian and I, when we started doing it, there was like 5 other people in there, and it's like little kids, like they go in for 30 seconds with the instructor, they pull them out, and then you go in, right? You're doing your thing, and it's like a full body workout.
Yeah.
Because you're using your core and all this stuff. So then, you're floating on your belly, and they're like, okay, hover sideways, go up, go down. And, you're doing it all by controlling your body movements. So then Brian and I got the idea. We're like, look, we want to come in here for a half hour, and we don't want anybody else. We want a private lesson, right? So now we got the whole tube to ourselves, right? And like, we're in and out every 2 minutes doing our thing. And then I think one of us went on vacation. It was probably me. And then when I came back, Brian's all advanced. He's on his back. He's doing the whole thing. They get me on the back. I'm flying into the wall, and I'm like, man, I could get a neck injury. This is no good. So, but I do need to get back to it, Brian. What are you doing now? Are you walking on the wall and stuff?
Yeah, like I'm teaching there, like part time.
Shit. See,
are you serious?
No.
Oh, I would have believed you. That's
he is. Yeah.
I haven't gone quite as much either, but I've been working on. Oh, what I'm working on is, you're flying on your back, and you kind of kick your heels and thrust yourself forward, and you're going to get into the sit fly position. It's kind of like at the beginning of The Matrix when they got Trinity cornered, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm going to surrender," and then does like the like this kind of thing right before she shoots the guy in the face.
I love it.
That so I call it the Trinity, and I've had it. You talk about burning money, whatever it is, $30 a minute. I don't know how many minutes I've spent not doing it, but I locked into it for like 6 seconds one time, and it was like the most amazing thing.
It's like Nirvana. I'm
gonna keep throwing money into this tube and watch it blow away. But it's just like the relaxation and the stress release I get from it is. Have you gone real skydiving? I've not. I went down. So I took a vacation a few months ago to Arizona, and they have like a compound there. You can go and pay some big amount of money and do like unlimited jumps for a day or whatever. But they had a skydive tube right next to it. So I went with an instructor and did some work there. But that tube is kind of funny because it sucks in air from the outside and pulls it in. So you're flying along, and then, bug squirts onto the, visor and stuff. So it's
like
kind
4D.
of environmental. Yeah. It's like, it's like the real, almost, I mean, it's one step closer to the real thing, but it did make me, by the time I watched people, kind of do it for a couple hours while we were eating, I was like, I kind of want to do this, but also I don't want that to be how I get a severe neck injury, but I could get that in the tube too. So I'm kind of.
What state was that in?
That was in Arizona, in Eloy is where this
Eloy.
It is. It's a big compound, and they got people come and they set up their tents and their trailers, and they stay there. Some of them stay there for like a week, and they like just jump all day, take a lunch break, jump.
That's
so
cool.
They got planes continually taking off, and you'll see the little dots in the sky, and then you kind of lose track of them, and all of a sudden they all pop their chute, and then they just start dropping right in front of you.
That's super cool.
Pretty cool to watch.
A lot of these instructors in the tube, at least the one here that we were going in, like they skydive, like that's their jam, right? And then they're teaching. They have to go through these courses to teach. But I was surprised at the number of instructors that were injured, right? Like because they have to. They have to sometimes catch a person who might have lost it, right? So you have like this, 130-pound woman who's an instructor, and then you got this 200-pound dude who's up 10 feet and loses it, and she's got to catch him so he doesn't break his neck, and then her shoulder's torn. I think that happened to like 3 or 4 people in there.
Their insurance has got to be crazy.
Eric and I sat down one time, just tried to spitball the costs, right? And we're just like, how does this? They got to be doing criminal stuff on the side, because how can you afford, even at the $30 a minute, right? You just go like, with all the insurance, energy, all that stuff. But one of the dudes a couple summers ago, exactly what Eric said. He got up, got a little out of control, and the worst thing you want to do, like if you're flying like this, worst thing you want to do is get like this, because then you just drop out of the sky. And some guy got up there, kind of went vertical. Instructor went to catch him, and then it tore 98% of his bicep because his arm bent the other way, and he's out. I haven't seen him for years, and he's kind of like,
he's
this
done.
is what I trained to do. What do I do now? And I think they're trying to figure.
So you're onto something, Brian. There might be up to some criminal activities. They might be the ones that are sending us phishing emails asking for gift cards.
It could be, and I'll tell you what. At the end of your flying, you can go up to them if you bring a USB drive, and they'll put your movies on that you've taken. So Eric and I are always like, "Ooh, I don't like the whole you plugging in a random USB drive from me into your systems." But even worse, I don't know if this was happening, Eric, when you and I were there, but now they just go, "Hey, just go into the back room to this domain joined machine. Just throw your device in there, and grab your videos." And it's so tempting to go like, maybe I'll just try like a little bit of a pen test here to see if, but obviously wouldn't, for the record.
You heard it here first, folks.
When we were there, I remember, they'd come around behind the counter and put it in, and we go behind the counter, Brian, and I swear they had yellow sticky, right? I mean, this is like the comical stuff. Yellow sticky password on the screen. It's just, we're just looking at each other like, are we in the Twilight Zone here? But
and not too worried about it. But again, how many organizations, at least from a physical security standpoint, that's the thing. You get one step past the receptionist, and it's like, "Oh, hello, everybody," with your monitor farm. Like, "Oh, sticky here, and I'll take one there, and I'll grab one there, and wow, that's HR system, and banks, and all sorts of good stuff right here."
Brian, that was a nice segue into the topic today that we can hopefully.
Oh, Josh, we're going to derail your topic. Josh is going to try to keep us locked in, Brian.
Oh man, yeah, and I'm using that guy. This is a nice.
He really is. He's really driving us. Okay. Hold on one sec, Josh. I did want to say though, Brian, you're on like podcast 680 some, right? So strong plug out to Brian. We definitely got a link out to it. Brian, you've got an awesome podcast, 7 Minute Security. The premise is what can you? I think the premise started about what can you do in 7 minutes, right? Around 7 minute security, but you do so much more than the podcast. And I also wanted to talk to you about this too, about your training, right? You have an awesome training curriculum that you do. And I don't know what you do, like 8 or 10 people at a time. I've got, I think, 3 or 4 people I want to get into the next one if you're ready to go. But it's everybody that's taken it has said that it's just an awesome class. It's great, an intro into Windows Active Directory and kind of that corporate security breaching. So really good stuff. The security teams that I work with at customers, I always recommend, you got to take this class. So coming to you there, Brian. If you want to set up a class, happy to get some people in it.
Very cool. Well, thanks. Yeah, and thanks for having me. And yeah, you're right. The podcast did start with the idea of being most podcasts are too long, so let's do a 7-minute one and just talk about a security thing. That's kind of what it was for a long time. Where I was a long time IT network admin, sysadmin type, and got into security. My first gig about 2013 or so, and it was just trial by fire, throw us into everything. So it's like, hey, Monday you're going to do an incident response for a little bit, and then tomorrow you'll be writing policies, and then after that it'll be on to vulnerability assessments and pen testing. And it was just like, man, I'm drowning, but I'm also kind of loving it. So I'm going to start this little short podcast as I drive from customer A to B. I'm going to quick do a brain dump on this cool vulnerability assessment tool I learned about called Nessus. And let me just tell you about that and what it costs and what it does and blah, blah, blah. And then just kind of kept that up, for several years. And then just gradually just got to the point where like the topics, and I started adding interviews and just a lot more things. And it was just harder and harder to cram things into 7 minutes. But, I've kind of had the name as both the podcast and the business for so long, it's kind of too hard to go back and change it. But my buddies just joke it, you should really rename it the Arbitrary Length Security Podcast, because we just never know what we're going to get. And yeah, I appreciate you plugging the training. That's something we have offered about 4 times a year now. And yeah, we keep it really small classes, but it's 3 half days. So 3 4-hour chunks. And you don't need to bring anything. We just let you remote right into a domain environment that looks, lives, breathes, just like a real environment you would attack in the wild. And together we go through enumerating it, attacking it, escalating privileges, all this stuff. And I've long said it is by far like the biggest work labor of love I've ever had, because it as you can imagine, something like that takes a ton of time. When you're building something intentionally broken with problems, right? And you want people to break it just enough to abuse it, but not make it cease to function. That's kind of a delicate dance. So it was awesome learning opportunity. But I always tell people, like, whenever I bring students through the class who haven't done something like this, I feel like the guy who's like seen a super good movie or read a really good book, and I know where all the best parts are. It's like, oh, I can't wait to see your reaction when we get to this next part where you get to be a domain admin. Because some people are just like, their minds are blown and they're like, okay, I'm quitting what I used to do for security and I'm being a pen tester. Like they get that kind of that glow of like, really doing it for reals and
for reals.
For real.
Kind of like when you had that chair flying experience, right? Like you got it for 6 seconds and you're locked in.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. The Trinity. And I just have to say, related to that, I also that whole Trinity thing that I'm working on. The other thing I've had in the tunnel, and I kind of feel it sometimes during pen testing, is there's one move you learn in the skydiving where, and I don't know if you got to do, maybe you did this too, Eric. You're on your back and you, when it's time to get out of the tunnel, you fly over, you stick your feet, into where there's no air, and then you kind of arch your back and you just up into a standing position and walk away. And it just feels like I wish I could do that in real life. A little hard to do on carpet, obviously, but like if that's how I could enter and exit rooms, that's what I would do.
Josh is going to have to come on your podcast to get what he wants to say in. So maybe you can have Josh on at some point. The other thing, you mentioned movies, Brian, and it turns out you're a little bit of a movie star.
That is correct. I was Christmas Caroler number 6 in the 1996 holiday comedy smash, Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yes. So I was in high school at the time, and they held auditions for a Christmas Caroler group to be part of the scene where Arnold is breaking into Phil Hartman's house and stealing this Turbo Man doll that's kind of like the toy every family wants for the holidays. So we went, it was just a crazy thing. We went and interviewed, and it was one of those like, great, thanks for the audition. Don't call us. We'll call you if you make it. And it was like a couple weeks later, I was at my after school job, and my then girlfriend, now wife, called me at work, and I was like, oh yeah, I can't talk right now. Like I'm at work. And she goes, we have to be in St. Paul for a costume fitting in 2 hours. I'm like, costume fitting? What? She's like, we made the movie. You know,
this is the real deal.
It was a real deal. Yeah. And just off like that into the land of Hollywood for about a week to go to a recording studio and record the vocals and then do a couple days on set. And man, I'll tell you what, I don't want to derail us too much, but I can see why people get addicted to that lifestyle where you've got, I mean, even at our little part, we had people who were just assigned to kind of be our assistants and be like, you know, is the sun too bright? Yeah. You know, do you need any sunglasses? Or anything? I'll bring down are you hungry? You look hungry. Should I bring your, and then let's touch up the makeup and all the stuff. I'm like, well, yeah, a guy could get used to this. But that
he had a real handler. It was a handler. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was the beginning and end, unfortunately, of,
but you still get paid.
Still get, I wish I still had it. We just put it in. Yes. Amy and I both got it. It was about a $4 check and that went right to the bank. Yeah.
You can't even get a cup of coffee for $4 anymore. I don't know what's going on.
No. Yeah. But it is kind of crazy, right? This many years later, to still get that about two or three times a year.
The system works.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely watch that movie every year, so I'm probably going to put it on tonight and pick you out.
You give him his 3 cents.
Yeah, there you go.
They did a casting in Jordan over the summer, and my mom actually got into a movie, Marmalade, as an extra over the summer, which was kind of cool, right? To then go to the movie and see her on the big screen. That's kind of fun.
That's awesome. I had no idea they did that.
Yeah. All right, Josh, go ahead. You sneak one in on us, Josh.
I haven't been in any movies. They don't want me in any movies. I know that.
That's not what I heard, Nick.
I'd maybe like to be in like Sicario or something cool like that, you know?
So, Brian, Nick has the thing. Let's just get it out in the open here. Josh, sorry.
I gotta go. It's time to go. Gotta go feed the cats.
So,
if I get it in first, it's fine.
I feel like Nick would make a good like Viking warrior, or like if we could shrink him, like scale him down to like a dwarf warrior.
Yeah. Like, what was the guy from Lord of the Rings with the, with the beard? Right? What was it?
Was it Oakenshield, the leader of the? Or was that the Hobbit? We're gonna have to get Jamie back on to check our Lord of the Rings lore, but yeah, no movies for me either. I selfishly just wanted to talk to Brian about music.
There you go. Yeah, Brian said that we could plug that too, couldn't we? Josh and Brian, musicians, and Josh in the industry of creating music for television shows and remastering that. So that is definitely a cool topic.
Yeah, I have a feeling we'll be bringing Brian back on. You've done over 600 episodes, it sounds like. This is actually just shout out to our episode, 40th episode. So the audit turns 40 today. So it's fitting that this is a hot mess midlife crisis episode.
This is exactly what it should be like.
Every day. Right.
Skydiving and dabbling back in the music and
Nick's hairless cats. He's got 2 hairless cats, Brian. What's the name of the cats?
Mr. Meowgie.
That's great.
General Meow and Mr. Meowgie. Yeah.
That is wonderful.
I have to say this every single time. These are all lies, people.
Well, we'll cut that out. The cat is on. That'll be edited right out. No, I think one of the cats is on Prozac or something. Why would you get a hairless cat, dude? There's something wrong with that animal.
No allergies. Streamline.
You got to put that SPF 50 on the cat every day down in Texas there.
Right. Texas sun, yeah. Yep. All good.
Well, just to give our listeners some context today, Brian Johnson from 7 Minute Security, we already talked about your podcast and a little bit about your background. But obviously, these guys have some rapport, worked together in the not so distant past. It says on your LinkedIn profile, Brian, that you're a security engineer, podcaster, and wannabe skydiver. I think we've covered 2 out of those 3 titles. Yeah. Maybe we could. I would love to hear some stories about you guys working together back in the day. Love to inform people about pen testing. I know it means penetration testing, but I'm not still quite sure on what exactly you're doing when you're doing pen testing when you're talking about it.
I mean, I would say like you put security people in a room and ask them to, define what that is and isn't, and what's a pen test versus a vulnerability assessment, right? We probably have some people that would come to blows with each other. But I like to, and maybe this might have come from.
It is a rowdy bunch.
Yeah, it is. This might have come from Eric, but when I'm talking about it with customers, I like to make sort of that security, like a physical security analogy where it's like, hey, if you said, hey, assess the security of, come across the street here, assess the security of my home, do a vulnerability assessment on my home. In my mind, that would be the equivalent of like, I kind of jiggle the front handle, I go over to the windows, I pull up on those a little bit. I, maybe look and see, it might be possible for somebody to throw a ladder up and then, get on the roof and then maybe get into one of the upstairs windows. And I kind of write you up a report that has a lot of like what ifs and maybe some recommendations on like, absolutely put a lock on that front door. I can see there's no lock, but it's kind of theoretical. It's a little bit light and fluffy. And maybe install a Ring camera and have some brighter lights on the outside, right? Like kind of low-hanging fruit stuff to keep baddies away. When you talk about a penetration test, again, using the physical security analogy, I think that for that, the kid gloves are off, where it's more like you're asking me to see, can I just take a brick, chuck it through the window, get inside, take all your, sensitive stuff and leave undetected. That's like a pretty bare bones, explanation, but that's how I see the two things separate. So when an organization asks us to do a penetration test, I'm always wanting to know, what exactly do they want? Because it can mean so many things to different people. So, if they've never had one, what we typically do is bring a little box out and we say, okay, we're gonna assume that given enough time, given enough money, enough effort by attackers, they're gonna find a way into this environment. They're gonna phish somebody, they're gonna hack the Wi-Fi, they're gonna ship one of your employees a USB drive, and they're going to plug it in, and that's going to give the bad person, a point of presence on that system. And so we typically start our tests from there, and we talk with the customer about, what is it that you want us to do? And if they don't know, we'll say, okay, well, we're going to look really deeply at Active Directory, because that can bring over a whole bunch of security issues just from being in Active Directory over the years. There's a lot of legacy settings that can be insecure that just are right there for the picking. That's the kind of stuff attackers would love to grab onto, right? Things that don't take very much effort, but could have super high impact and maybe escalate their privileges to, domain admin. So we spend a lot of time looking for as many easy wins as we can. And then we also talk with the customer about, for example, where are your most valuable assets, or like tomorrow, if you woke up and blank was being reported on the news, is it credit card information? Is it your intellectual property? Is it, a client list? Like, what is it that they would have that would give you, a nightmare? Then we bake in some custom goals too about like, well, we're going to try to get to that data so that we can, at the end of this, we can say to you, let's look at the story. Let's look at the narrative of how we got there. How can we, back through this and throw up as many roadblocks as possible so that, a bad guy or gal cannot repeat that. There's a lot that can be done just with Microsoft's tools and services that they give to us. But I think the frustrating thing, in my opinion anyway, is that, Microsoft hands us things like, Azure and Active Directory. And I think, again, my words, they're saying, hey, here's these great tools and services, and they're designed so that everything just works together and, we're all happy and compatible. But, you want it secured. Oh, well, in that case, you've got a lot of reading to do and a lot of figuring out to do of this on your own, and it is kind of up to us to make it more secure. So I try to work in that space as much as possible with customers and talk about like, hey, here's a PowerShell script we can run. Here's a group policy we can put in place that, look at that. If we did that for finding 3, that would have kind of a domino effect, and that would wipe out 4 through 6, right? And you're getting, multiple pen test birds with one, with one remediation. So, sorry, that was too long. That was great.
That was 7 minutes.
There we go.
We're out of here.
Thank you very much. Roll the jingle.
It's interesting that you certainly agree on the pen test side, right? Kind of the rattle of the doors and windows and everything. And as you look at, well, how do we improve a customer's security posture? Even the best technical controls or physical controls sometimes can be offset by not having administrative controls in place or policy. And I'll give for instance, we were doing a physical a little while back against an organization that had lots of outside exposed these locker type of devices, and they had physical locks on them. And some of them had intrusion detection, some of them didn't. Like if the cabinet's opened, then an alarm goes off, but some didn't. And they all were secured by an abloy lock. And that's, if you've seen that lock, it's kind of like a 3D key. It's not, cool. Multiple pins. It's one of the tougher locks to pick. So it's like, well, yeah, they all have these. And the guy showed me his key. And he's like, in order to get this key made, the manufacturer is the one that has to specify that a new lock can be set with this specific key. And I was like, okay, cool. So, you have a key that gets into all these locks. There are 100 locks right across the campus. This key will get in there. I said, well, what happens if somebody leaves the organization that has the key? Or what if somebody loses the key? So, as we look at that, from an administrative control perspective, putting those controls in place that talk about what you would do in those cases. And it's great that you have a really strong lock, but if you lose a key and everybody could then have access to that, and that might, be available to 3D print or whatever, is that a good control versus a control that maybe the physical security is not as good, but you have policy in place that it's easier to deal with it if an event happens or a key is misplaced or what have you. So I think it's that kind of hand in hand of you've got the administrative controls and technical or physical controls.
Oh, for sure. And what you just said made me think of too, something that I don't think enough customers do that kind of bridge that gap, I think, between some of those technical and administrative things is I really, really love well done tabletop exercises where you kind of throw off like using what you just said, Eric, as kind of a what if for the organization, getting a bunch of the leaders, a mix of like whoever, right? HR, legal, management, tech folks, get them in a room and throw out some of these kind of scenarios. I think that can help where, maybe you think you're covered because you've had a pen test for a few years and then you're like, look at this awesome set of policies and handbook, right? Like, I think we've covered all our bases. It can look really great just at a 30,000 foot level, but then when you start doing a tabletop to challenge those things, it can be really interesting. And we did one not too long ago where it was, our person leading the tabletop just threw out to the organization that, let's say it's a Friday morning, you wake up and you've gotten notification from Twitter. Some random Twitter user has said, "Hey, organization, we've got sensitive data about your organization. We'd like you to pay X dollars." And, you just kind of let that sit with the people in the room, right? Like, okay, what do we do first? And it ends up being like a very heated discussion very quickly because some people just immediately go, well, let's call the FBI or the authorities, right? The technical people in the room go, oh, heck no, we won't pay. And it's just like all these conversations bubble up. And clearly it's just like everybody has a very different idea of what you do first. And then, I
was going to see if we could just ask them to wait till Monday. Yeah. Probably not going to happen.
But just to kind of layer things on top of that, right? Like to keep a narrative going all the way where it's like, okay, what about on Saturday morning? They say, hey, just want to remind you, we want your money. Here's a little screenshot of data that, firmly says, yes, they really do have a foothold in the organization. And they're showing you, sensitive documents. And, again, people are going, well, I think we would challenge it and ask them to send a copy of a whole file. And then we throw in, well, by the way, they also said the ransom just went up, 30% every day that you're going to dork around with them, and it's really, it can be, I think, both fun and frustrating after these conversations because you haven't, solved all the world's problems in that tabletop session. But I think what it does do is it highlights gaps where you think you're kind of all ironed out, whether that be technical stuff on the pen test side or on your policy side, you didn't account for, kind of a ransomware threat, right? And it at least gives you things to work on in the next, calendar year, because you're never going to be perfect, right? But it just keeps that security posture challenged, and then we make it better, challenge again, make it better. And So yeah, you're right. I think that bridge, that if you can strike a semi-happy balance between the administrative controls and the technical, man, you'd be way better off than most of the organizations out there, unfortunately.
I was really curious, Brian, to get into one portion of like open source intelligence, kind of like what you guys are doing there. Back to your process a little bit with like Shodan or Spiderfoot or, any of those tools. Are you actively using those, or do you find those to be a really good starting point? Or I guess to further onto that question, if you just had a couple of those tools, what would you reach for?
Yeah, I suppose it kind of might depend on the scope of the engagement, but yeah, just as far as and I have I don't want to speak too out of turn because I do have a couple people who really love that stuff and they're into the Spiderfoot and
let her go.
This Roach Arm and whatever else is. No, I don't know if that's a thing, but they're into all those tools. But what we will do is, as part of just kind of a general pen test, especially if they're like, hey, here's our set of IPs, we want these fully tested, this and that. It may come to be that once we actually do that testing, there's like nothing open, and it's like, okay, well, I want to give them, some more value here. So I do try to zoom out and do a bit more of the 50,000 foot view and recon open source intelligence. Yeah. And as far as like kind of go to tools, one thing that a lot of the smaller companies we work with want to see insight on is like, is there credentials of ours out there that maybe are from breaches, and are any of them still valid, kind of thing.
Sure.
So like a mini exercise we'll do pretty often is looking at, and I know there's lots of cred dumps around the icky parts of the web, but the DeHashed service, I don't know if you guys have used that one. That's just DeHashed.com. And that one is really interesting. I love and sort of hate the site at the same time, because they sort of, you go to the site and they're like, hey, we're providing you a service. We're kind of gray hat folks here. We pull these creds from different dumps and we offer them to you so you can check your own company, see if you're owned. And we do it at a very low price. It's like, we're good guys. Okay, we're totally good guys, but we also want to line our pockets. And I get that. That's just kind of business. But the good part is it's really affordable. So I think for, I don't know, maybe it's only like a week or two of access, but it's like $5 for access. And then for, I think, a few more dollars, you can get API credits. So, semi off the record, but not really, because I'm sure everybody does this. You can buy the week's worth of access for tools, or just, to the service. And then what I'll typically do is I'll look at all of our open engagements, and you have to spend API credits to query them, right? But it's like, well, I've bought a week or 10 days of access. It's like, and I've got my API credits. I'm going to just get as much juice for the squeeze as I can. And so I'll just run with the API. They have a script they put out too on GitHub, but I'll just dump out all the information I can on these organizations. And it's kind of interesting. You'll often get two blobs of data from every query. You'll get just like hashes that have been seen from these different dumps, or in some cases cracked credentials. So I'll take that list typically, and then there's a bunch of different tools that'll spray Microsoft 365, but I want to say it's Go 365 from Optiv has been really helpful for queuing up a list of user : password. That's kind of the format they want a text file in, and then you can just let that go at the tenancy. But of course, as you might expect, Microsoft's pretty darn good at seeing a single IP, hammering away at a tenancy, and they'll tend to shut you down. So this may sound a little bit elementary school, but it totally works. I've got a subscription to some VPN services, and what I'll do is just essentially run a script that connects me out to some random IP, does one try of that list of cracked users and their hashes, does one login, then rotates to a different IP, tries another login, rotate all over the world, so that I can very quickly get through that list in a reasonable amount of time without my IPs getting blocked. And that can produce some interesting results. Sometimes I got to make a quick phone call and be like, whoa, your, head accounting person is using this password I got out of this breach. They are using it right now. And maybe they've got MFA, but I think as we found out, there can be ways around that. You can do MFA fatigue attacks. MFA is great, but it's not, the silver bullet to security, as nothing really is.
So you're not dressing up like a UPS driver walking in with a sharp, social engineering and.
I'm not. I can't stand that. My very first security job, I did have to do some of that, and my coworkers would just kind of make fun of me because they'd be like, "Hey, here's my imitation of Brian. Hi, I've got a package for Steve. My name's John. Would you just give me your password? Just let me leave this place with some dignity. Just give me somebody. I'll take anybody's password.
Give me something.
Give me that sticky note that's got some passwords. I can't do it. It gives me.
It's certainly not for everybody.
Yeah.
You're just too good of a guy, Brian, I guess.
I don't know.
Shows your character.
And I know I'm totally like taking up all the time. Can I tell you one story though, where we did this on the fly have to do,
I'd love to hear it.
Well, so this was one of my first gigs as 7-minute security. And I was flying to another state to do just a more vanilla, like sit down, critical security controls assessment. And that's, that was it. So it's like, I flew down there the night before. I get up the morning of, and I'm just, the building is within walking distance of the hotel. And a block away from there, my contact calls me and is like, "Hey man, would you be up for a little adventure this morning?" And I was like, well, I mean, we're going
to iFly.
I thought I was hoping he was going to say that. He's like, "Well, really, I know that like you're here just to do this assessment, but we've got this systemic problem with our front desk person where we have in policy and we have one-on-one told this person, don't plug in random flipping USB drives that people come if they need stuff printed or whatever. We're not Kinkos. He absolutely should not plug anything in, via USB. Could you just, when you get up here, when you get to the lobby, could you take a drive? Could you think of some excuse that you need something, printed?" And I was like, oh man, like I would want to do this right. I'd want to do a little homework and like at least think of some lie that's kind of, and he's like, no, that's fine. Just we want to be able to check. I want to be able to say to my boss that we did that. And, today I would be like, nope, scope creep, not doing it. But
you need your Hollywood handler.
That's what he did. Yeah. This is the handler. Brian is,
I don't blame you.
But I was like, okay, fine. And I did have a USB drive with me. So I made a, fake resume and I put it on there and I did walk in and I just pretended that I was there for a job interview. And I'm such a klutz. I forgot to get a paper resume to hand out to people. Would they print it? And of course, the nice front desk guy is like, yeah, sure, give me that drive, right? So he prints it out, gives it to me, and I'm like, thanks. I'm just going to go to my car or whatever, and I'll be back in a moment. So I go out in the hallway and I call my contact, and I'm like, okay, I did it. I passed the test. Can we just meet and start our assessment now? And he's like, are you up for one final challenge? No, I don't want to do this. He goes, okay. Just let me tell you what I want you to do, and you can say no if you want to. He goes, if you go up about 5 floors, there's you get off the elevators, take a left. There's a locked area. That's where like our accounting people and the IT people are. And I want to see if you can steal a laptop. It's like, forget it, dude. Not doing it. He goes, it would mean a lot to me if you would do it and look good for my boss to say that we did that, because we've been wanting to, social engineer that group. So I go up to that floor, go down the hallway, and it is locked. There's no lobby to go into. There's nobody to try to sweet talk. It's just a locked door. I forgot to say, he met me in the hallway and he provided me this little hotel key card thing that had been cut out to look kind of like a shiv. And he's like, he goes, I've done this after hours. You can wiggle the shiv thing behind the lock plate and you can hook the latch open. And I said, yeah, but dude, you're doing it when nobody's around. This place is full of people right now. He's like, please, it would really mean a lot to me. So I just kind of peek in the little sideways slit window thing, right? And I see that there are people just around the corner in the offices, but I take the little hook thing and I'm trying to put it inside the plate. And then I see somebody and they wave and they get up and they start walking over. So I Forrest Gump it like hallway, but they open it up like, I'm sorry, are you here to see somebody? And I just go, yeah, I have a job interview with, and I knew, with my site contact name. And I was like, and I have a PowerPoint that I want to show them. And I didn't bring my computer. And so I was wondering if I could use one of your computers. And they're like, what? I said, yeah, I really, they sent me down so that you could give me a computer I could bring to the interview and then put up a PowerPoint of my resume and such. And the lady goes, well, okay. And she waves me back and loads me up.
What else do you need?
A login and the whole thing, right? And just puts it in my arms and waves me on my way. And so I go back down to the main floor and meet my contact. I finally go into his office and I'm like, dude, I'm just sweating like Chris Farley. I'm just like, dude, I hated that. I hate you. I hate everything that's happened right now. And what I felt worst about is as we got talking, like 2 minutes later, the gal who had given me the machine came just tearing into the office and is also like, oh my gosh, I think I did something wrong. And then she sees me and is like, what's going on? And so I just that's part of the reason I don't do that, right? Is just that like,
and then he's like, but wait a minute, I got a third thing in the garage downstairs. There's a Mustang. I just need you to hotwire it, right? It's cool. Just hotwire it. We'll just see if it works.
The rule of threes, like
milking you for social engineering.
Oh yeah, and I just hate that. And then to have to like go to lunch with all those people after kind of got two of them in trouble. And that was extreme circumstances, right? Like other engagements, I'm sure are much more. That we've done are much more planned out, but this impromptu stuff, it's like I wanted to throw up. It was the worst.
Sounds like you're pretty good at it for being.
I was going to say,
you're being so reluctant to do so. It sounds like you killed it.
But I think it was because there was no prep time. I think I would have had like, if you would have given me like a week to prepare for it, it would have been garbage. They would have been like, dude, you're sweating like Chris Farley. Whatever you're doing, get on.
You've been overthinking it.
I'm that type for sure. So, but yeah, that was that. I think after that, I was just like, nope, I'm gonna bring in
the computer.
Right.
That's awesome.
I got a question. It's a little off the topic of what we were just on, but have you guys that have been doing this penetration testing, you're working with these organizations to shore up their security risk, and then you experience some breaches here and there, or people that do get through. Have you ever seen any of those perpetrators be brought to justice? Or are these people just kind of shadow masters? Because it sounds like it's more common than we'd like it to be. But these people are in different countries, where they can't be extradited. Yeah. Or have you ever seen justice being served to these people?
Yeah, early in my career, and I'm certainly dating myself, but I'm going back to the late 1990s, right? So we're 99. 98, 99, and I was working for a company where I was their network administrator at the time. And it's embarrassing to even say this, but there was no firewall, right? This is like back in the day when things could just sit out on the internet. And I think we might have had IP chains or IP tables, like some sort of janky Linux firewall, because the company was a startup and like they didn't want to spend money on anything. And like, here I am saying like, hey, we need this or that. And they're like, they didn't even know what I was talking about. But I'm trying to build out these servers. I remember we were building out these, it was these 1U bladed servers. And the company's out of business, but there was a local distributor in town. And rather than pay for the shipping of the servers, right? They're like, "Oh, Eric, can you just go pick them up?" So, and I'm just painting the picture of how cheap this company was. So, like, I got to drive like 20 miles, and I show up, and at the time I had this little hatchback car, and I pull up, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here to pick up the servers or whatever." And they're like, "Okay, yeah, just pull your truck around the back to the loading dock." And I'm like, "Well, I don't really have a truck, but I think they could fit my car." And they kind of just look at me weird. And if you've seen a server before, it's like, the server, it might be rack depth in 1U, but then like the box it comes in is, this huge box, right? So like I could fit two in the car. So I got a call from the FBI, and I was like, I thought it was a joke at first. And I was like, this is so-and-so. And it turns out that it wasn't a joke. It was really the FBI. That we had a malicious actor that had gotten into our systems and then had jumped to several other company systems, and they had traced it back to our IP address. And, then of course we helped them and provided logs and kicked the malicious actor out and all that sort of stuff. But I stayed with that company for a number of years, and they grew, and they got a little bit better with funding. But I remember like 2 years later, I got a call or an email from the FBI guy, and he was like, yeah, we caught the guy and they were bringing him to justice. And I think, if I'm recalling correctly, the guy was, I think he was like out of South Carolina or something, but he had used our systems to get into other people's systems, and they were able to catch him and apparently brought him to justice. But I thought it was kind of cool that it actually worked. And that was before like cybersecurity was really a thing. Yeah. But I don't know that I've been involved with quite a few remediation attempts since, and work, helping customers get out of that. But I don't know that I've ever found one recently where they're like, yeah, we got the guy and or group, and we're dealing with it.
Yeah, so they certainly get better at hiding, making it hard, right? Like making you have to jump through additional hoops. I mean, probably back in the day you were describing, like it would have been easier to go, oh, this IP, was from here, therefore I can sort of accept that it's this organization or whatever. But now with, the ability to sort of weave yourself in and out of multiple VPNs and stuff, it's like just this web. I think it would be very hard to untangle, just purely based on source attacking IPs. Yeah.
Were you in the industry when hubs were still a thing?
Yeah, well, I was doing some IT work. Yeah. And in fact, I still run into a hub or two when it's I'm out at a customer and just like, what is that down there on the floor? Like, I didn't really see that at the top. Wow, how does anything work? But yeah.
Well, you'll appreciate this, and I'll be real quick because I know you're on time. But I'm interviewing for this account, right? And I think at the time I was like the 30th employee, and I'm talking to the VP of sales during the interview, and he's got a new laptop and he's got a cable plugged into the laptop. And he's like, I just got this laptop, but I'm really having trouble getting it online. So I was like, oh, let me take a look, right? So I pull out the Ethernet cable, and an Ethernet cable has 4 pairs, right? 8 wires. This thing had 4 wires, and like it looked like somebody had homemade it, slid it in to the RJ45 jack and crimped it down. I'm like, well, this is your problem here. And it turns out that when it was a 10 base T jack, like that janky cable thing worked, but his laptop was, maybe it was trying to operate at like 10-100 or something, but it just didn't work. So then I'm like, well, okay, let me take a look. So I'm like standing on a chair and then on a table in his office, and I'm looking up in the ceiling tiles, and they've got a hub up there. And half the connections in the hub were like this janky. And so I'm like, who's doing this? Like, and he's like, oh, there's somebody that's kind of in IT, and they were just trying to wire this up. And so I was like, well, this is your problem. All this needs to be rewired, and so on and so forth. And that's probably how I got the job. But, like 2 weeks later, now I'm up in the ceiling and rewiring it.
He's like sucker born every minute. Yeah.
It wasn't a thing where it's like, yeah, go, find a wiring contract. No, I'm there with a hole saw, dude. And zip. It was a great job for me young in my career, because I was doing everything from the layer 1 stuff all the way up through the firewall and email security. But running wires up in the plenum, it was an interesting job.
I would highly recommend, anybody who's like, you got a couple years of IT experience, or even security, and you kind of want to take that to a next level and just broaden your horizon and kind of get a feel for lots of different things like virtualization, storage, firewall, networking. I would say go work for a school district. That is one of my scariest and favoritist jobs, where often is the case, not always, but often it's like, if whatever it is runs on electricity or has an internet connection, you're in charge of it by default. I would get these calls about like, hey, we've got a a matinee starting of, the high school performance of whatever, and the guy who normally runs sound and light is not here, so you're gonna do it. I'm just sitting there sliding faders, right? But you get such a feel for that kind of stuff. Troubleshooting, like you said, where's this janky wiring go? Oh, to a hub, and then to a switch, and then to another hub. Well, how does this work, and how do I untangle it all? I feel like it's a great way to cut your teeth, and then also I think it's a more forgiving environment because typically the staff around, they're so happy. They just want things working. So, if you can improve their quality of life, right? And you get a lot of direct customer, experience working with forgiving and not forgiving teachers and that kind of stuff. But that just opened my eyes to, so many things in the tech world. And what I'm glad I wasn't into at the time was security, because I remember those tech ed kids. We had to put what is that great software, Deep Freeze on.
Oh yeah, where you could roll it back. Yeah.
So it was great because they would all day try to download tools and format the C drive and do all this stuff. And then you just reboot and it would come back. But I mean, their job, because obviously they weren't doing schoolwork, was to try to make my life difficult. So it started, I think, to exercise that brain of they're trying to do malicious stuff. What controls can I put in place? To keep the lab functioning and keep teaching happening. And maybe in a weird way, that was maybe in a very, very weird way. Maybe that was a small light bulb of oh, I really like this stuff. The whole bad people trying to do bad stuff. I want to understand that and then put up some guardrails.
You found your calling.
We have some mutual friends that were started out their career, cybersecurity career at my high school. And brings me back to the 90s. You mentioned 1999, Eric. I want to go around and let's say what we were wearing and what we were driving in 1999. I don't know. Nick, you might not have been driving yet. But I'll start first. I was, the Matrix. I just got to say, I think of Eric, I imagine you wearing a trench coat with Neo glasses, maybe
I was 11 years old.
Yeah. Okay. So you weren't driving. You were driving a scooter, maybe, or
there you go. Power wheels.
What were you driving?
I had a leather jacket, long hair down to here, and driving a white Pontiac Grand Am that I inherited from my grandmother that smelled like vinegar because a whole gallon of vinegar had been dumped into the back of the trunk on accident during a shopping expedition. So. Yeah. How about you, Eric?
I don't know what I was wearing. It's probably jeans and no, I take it back. I do remember what I was wearing. Oh, boy. I do remember. So, I was kind of out of college a couple of years, and I would come to work at that company, and I went from senior network engineer to being IT director there. But that was something you could do right back in the day in small companies. But I would come in a t-shirt and Umbros. So if you remember the Umbro soccer shorts, right? I'm showing up in t-shirt and Umbros, and I didn't give a shit, right? Because it's no, I don't need to dress up for the servers. So this is what I wear. And those Umbros don't even have a pocket. So I'd have my wallet in my sock. And I remember going into because I was on the leadership team, they'd have these company leadership meetings. And, I'm in my early 20s, and I'm just, I'm in the meetings, Umbros and t-shirt. Everybody else is dressed up. And I'm looking back, I'm man, I was an asshole back then. But I was driving a Mazda RX-7, which was the twin turbo Mazda at the time. And that was just my personality back then.
Well, we're all going to wear Umbros next time.
The photo shoot.
Yeah.
Or for the headshots.
Man.
Business on top, party in the bottom.
There you go.
I was probably inheriting my dad's trait of just really not caring too much. It's as long as it was comfortable, that was it. So it was actually probably what I have now, not great jeans, nothing, just off the whatever's cheapest rack. And driving, my sister and I shared those years. We shared a 1988 Toyota Tercel stick, which still is I love driving manual. So in some ways, it's still my favorite car. Put a lot of miles. did a lot of stupid, things in that car. And yeah, that was probably it.
Everybody was wondering, 99, baby.
Then how many cats did you have, Nick, at that time?
Yeah,
I think I was at like 4, only like probably 3 or 4.
Thanks so much, Brian, for being on today. I'd love to have you back on and maybe go into some other stories. I feel like we were only scratching the surface on this. So yeah, we'll definitely be hitting you up for another episode down the road here. So well, once again, you're listening to The Audit presented by IT Audit Labs. Our guest today was Brian Johnson from 7 Minute Security, joined by Nick Mellum and Eric Brown. I'm Joshua Schmidt, your producer. Please like, share, and subscribe. Our podcast comes out every 2 weeks. So leave us a comment on topics that you'd like to hear about and continue the conversation, and we'll see you soon.
You have been listening to The Audit, presented by IT Audit Labs. We are experts at assessing risk and compliance while providing administrative and technical controls to improve our clients' data security. Our threat assessments find the soft spots before the bad guys do, identifying likelihood and impact, while our security control assessments rank the level of maturity relative to the size of your organization. Thanks to our devoted listeners and followers, as well as our producer, Joshua J. Schmidt, and our audio-video editor, Cameron Hill. You can stay up to date on the latest cybersecurity topics by giving us a like and a follow on our socials and subscribing to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you source your security content.